Hi everyone, I'm Delaney.
And I'm Hadley.
And this is Twice as Good.
Today we're visiting Seattle, Washington.
Seattle has a fabulous culinary scene brimming with fresh, locally sourced ingredients. And Washington State is famous for its apples, cherries, and produce. Seattle is known for its fresh seafood.
Later today, we'll be visiting Pike Place Market to get a first-hand look. Seattle also has a history steeped in science. The Space Needle is synonymous with Seattle and was built as part of the 1962 World's Fair. The Space Needle was designed to look like a flying saucer, part science and part science fiction. It was based on practical theory but powered by imagination. Later today, we'll be visiting the Museum of Pop Culture, a place where science and fantasy come together to inspire performance, the visual arts, and innovation. From the Space Needle, we can look down at Elliott Bay, which is part of Puget Sound. Puget Sound is an inlet of the Pacific Ocean and also part of an intricate network of coastal waterways known as the Salish Sea. Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia, Everett, and Bellevue are all major Washington State cities located on the Puget Sound. From up here on the Space Needle, you can also glimpse Mount Rainier, the highest peak in the Cascade Range. It's an awe-inspiring sight because besides its natural beauty, Mount Rainier is also home to an active volcano. We'll be exploring Mount Rainier later today too. Right now, we're heading to Skyline Level, located at the 100-foot level of the Space Needle to start cooking Seattle-inspired dishes with SkyCity executive chef Jeff Maxfield. The SkyCity restaurant was originally known as the Eye of the Needle and has been in operation since the 1962 World's Fair. Today, the driving force behind the SkyCity menu is executive chef Jeff Maxfield, whose recipes feature Washington State produce, seafood, and other locally sourced ingredients.
We're doing Dungeness crab cakes with an apple relish, a very quintessential Northwest dish. So we've got great Dungeness crab from our local waters. It's been picked of all the shells. The next ingredient we're going to add to that is a little Dijon mustard. It's fantastic together. The next one is horseradish. It actually brings out that great sweetness. So that's just some fresh grated horseradish. Do about another spoonful of that on there as well. So 2 eggs in this recipe, so go ahead and crack those and right inside. Nicely done. And Old Bay is just a blend of secret spices. And a lot of crab cake recipes call for mayonnaise. This recipe, actually, we're going to use heavy cream. So what we've done is taken the heavy cream and reduced it down by half, which just kind of thickens it. So let's put about half of that in there or so. Perfect. So then what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and mix that up.
Is there anything different about working so high up above the city?
You know, we don't have everything right at our fingertips when we need it, which can be a challenge. So we have to be really organized in order to make sure everything runs smoothly. So everybody, I'm sure, has seen the little trick with smashing garlic. Now, here's a little secret. Pinch a little salt on it, and you can actually use your knife to mince it. All right. And then that will go right in, pardon me. Okay, so jalapeno. If you don't like the seeds, the spiciness of the jalapeno, you can just take those seeds out.
Just add a little touch of green.
So the last thing we're going to do with that recipe is add a little bit of Japanese breadcrumbs. We're only going to really just bring enough breadcrumb into the recipe to kind of bind it together. The next part of this recipe is an apple relish, which, you know, Washington is famous for its apples. We're using a Braeburn, which has a nice acidity to it. We've already washed them, so we'll just run that on the mandolin. You're just going to work around that core. Another little secret that we're going to do, we're going to put this right in a bowl, and we've got lemon lime soda. And what lemon lime soda does is keep those apples nice and bright. Red bell pepper will give us some color. All right, so all we're doing is we're going to cut these peppers just so they look kind of about the same length as the apple. Then we're going to put a little bit of cilantro. So go ahead and pull it off the stem, and you can put it right there in the mixture. Perfect. And so I've got a little vinaigrette, which is just a whole apple that's been pureed with apple cider vinegar and then emulsified with just some salad oil, which is a great way to kind of add a little more apple flavor. So we're going to make crab cakes. So you're going to make a nice little ball like that. and we're gonna sprinkle breadcrumbs right over the top of it. So I've just got a little bit of salad oil here. When you're putting food into a pan with oil, you wanna start closest to yourself and just let them fall away from you so that if they do splash, the splash goes to the back of the pan. You know, the crab is already cooked. We really just wanna cook that egg that we put in. It was raw, and by the time they get nice and golden brown, that egg will cook up just fine. So we've turned the heat off, and we're gonna just let those sit in the pan until we're ready to plate here. So we've got our apple relish, very simple, you know, 3 or 4 ingredients. And so what we'll do is we'll put a nice little pile of this right on the center of the plate.
Oh, that's so pretty.
So you can serve it just like that. Or if we'd like to, we can put a little bit more of this vinaigrette right around the plate. Well, let's go ahead and taste it.
This is really good. Edible.
Pike Place Market opened August 17, 1907, and is one of the oldest continuously operated public farmers markets in the United States.
Its central street, Pike Place, runs northwest from Pike Street to Virginia Street and allows consumers to meet the farmers and producers of their foods.
One of the most iconic destinations at Pike Place is the Pike Place Fish Market, located right at the corner of Pike Street and Pike Place.
The Pike Place Fish Market is known for their habit of hurling customers' orders across the shopping area. A typical routine involves a customer ordering fish, Pike Place fishmongers in rubber overalls and boots calling out the order, other team members loudly repeating the order, and the original fishmonger throwing the customer's fish behind the counter for wrapping. The Pike Place Fish Market was purchased in 1965 by John Yokoyama. Initially, Pike Place Fish Market was unknown outside of the Seattle area, but Yokoyama and his staff decided to change that in a meeting in 1986. And we're excited to hear about how they introduced flying fish.
The reason we started throwing fish is because in the olden days, the fish market was backwards. And I counted 50 steps to go out and get 1 pound of clams, 1 little bag of clams. So when I got out front and I bagged up the clams, I looked back at the kid that was working back there and I said, hey, catch. And so I threw him a bag of clams. And I thought, my God, I saved 50 steps. It was all about saving steps.
Is there any technique to throwing and catching the fish because they're so slippery?
You got to throw the fish so it flies through the air like this. You don't want that thing flipping through the air or flopping this way or that way. You have to throw it so it's straight and it just goes in a line like this up to over the counter. So they got their hands out and they can just grab it.
What's a fishmonger?
A fishmonger is someone who sells fish.
How can you tell if the fish is fresh?
Fish doesn't smell like fish unless it's getting old. So if it smells fishy, you don't want to get it.
King salmon is the largest, most prized species of the salmon family. Well, what we're gonna do is we're gonna fillet it first. So we go right behind the collar here, and we're gonna turn that knife and go right off the spine. All right, now look at that gorgeous color. We sell about 25,000 pounds of salmon a year. So we're gonna leave the skin on, and what that does is help to make it easier to serve. And we can even put that right down in the center, and you can just roll the corners up around it. So we've got a steak seasoning here, which is one that we use in our restaurant. That's a mixture of salt and pepper. There's some brown sugar, dried herbs. Next, we're gonna do a little bit of that garlic that's chopped over on the left-hand side. Sprinkle it right over it. And I'm gonna give you a little bit of onion to put on top. This is an onion that's grown here, comes out usually in the spring, nice and sweet. So then go ahead and sprinkle the raspberries over the top. 8 or 10 of each raspberries, just sprinkle it right over the fish. And you can put these little lemon wheels on there as well. And then if you'd like, there's some fresh thyme. And then you can just sprinkle that right over the top. And then what we're gonna do is just put a little bit of butter, a couple chunks of butter, and what this does is helps to kind of baste that fish as it's cooking. So we're gonna do a butter sauce. We're gonna put a shallot. We only need about half of a shallot this size. We've got peppercorns, whole peppercorns. This is red wine vinegar that's been infused with raspberries. And this is a very classic sauce base. So we've got some heavy cream here. What we want to do is we want to reduce it down to about half of its original volume. You can break up all those raspberries, and then we'll let that sit right on the burner. You want to put the butter in? Right to the center. Go ahead and pop it right in. Okay, so I've turned the heat off, and we're just gonna let that sit. I brought the fish right off the grill, and so we'll strain our sauce.
And do we just drizzle the sauce on top?
We will. You can actually serve a little bit on the side if you'd like to. We'll do one little nice serving. All right, so that's that raspberry sauce. What do we want to garnish with? Pick a couple herbs out of there.
We could use some parsley or some dill.
All right, you want to taste?
Sure. This is really good.
Washington State is famous for its produce. For example, the Rainier Cherry was first developed in 1952. It is named for nearby Mount Rainier. For more than 50 years, Sosio's fruit and produce has been displaying Washington State's huge variety of locally grown fruit and produce.
What varieties of fruits and produce grow here in Seattle?
Washington is known for their apples. We grow about 75% of the apples in the country are grown in eastern Washington.
Wow.
And cherries. We're the biggest producer of cherries in the country. Seasonally, the produce items will change, and including all the different herbs that we get and stuff like that. But at times, we might have anywhere from 80 to 110 different things on the stand at a time. People's frame of reference for fruit is mainly grocery stores. So I tell them to try everything. Don't tell me what you don't like until you try it again.
Mount Rainier is located 54 miles southeast of Seattle. It is both the highest mountain in the Cascade Range and the highest peak in the state of Washington.
It's also a stratovolcano. There are several different types of volcanoes. A stratovolcano, or composite volcano, is a conical volcano consisting of layers of solid lava flows mixed with layers of other rock. A cinder cone volcano doesn't have any horizontal layers and is instead a steep conical hill of tephra, or volcanic debris, that accumulates around and downwind from the vent. A shield volcano is a type of volcano built entirely or mostly from fluid lava vents. They are named like this because when viewed from above, you can see just how massive and imposing they are, like a warrior's shield. Mount Rainier is what's called a stratovolcano, or composite volcano. It has a conical interior that is built of many layers, or strata, of hardened lava, tephra, pumice, and volcanic ash.
We're doing Beecher's flagship cheese, which is a local white cheddar cheese. And then we're gonna do a little Washington cherry preserves to go along with it. All right, so first thing we wanna do is take the stems off, and then you can pop them right in that little hopper there. Perfect. And we can just pop those cherries right in this pan. And this one we're gonna use a little bit of lemon zest. So we'll just put a little bit of that lemon zest in. And we're gonna juice this lemon right into it.
You can just hold your hand right here and squeeze
There
it.
you go.
How long do they cook?
They're gonna cook until they're tender and kind of cook down like a jam might be. Another little trick for lemons that might make it easier for you.
Whoa,
Put the
that's
lemon
so
in there.
cool.
And then you can squeeze.
Oh, whoa, that's too cool. It's like
So then you don't have to squeeze too hard on the lemon with your hand. And we've got a little bit of salt, which the salt will actually help draw out some of that liquid that's in the cherries. And we've got some sugar. I'm going over like medium
Okay.
heat. Too hot will actually, you don't want it to burn. You want the cherries to have time to actually cook down. Part of this recipe is jalapeno honey. So we're just gonna warm this honey up, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna put a little jalapeno inside. With the jalapeno, we'll split it. We're gonna take the seeds out of this one, just so it's not too spicy. Yeah, so you're starting to, that sugar's starting to kind of get caramely in there.
That looks good.
So we've got the jalapeno that we're just dicing here small. That's gonna go right into the honey. Just until the honey starts to bubble. Meanwhile, we're gonna roll up our cheese in speck. Pull the ham over. So what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wrap it around your cheese. Perfect.
Are cherries done?
Cherries are done. So now I'll just grab a quick saute pan, a little bit of vegetable oil. When sauteing or searing things in a pan, it's always best to use vegetable oil rather than olive oil. Just put it down towards you and then pop it away from you, okay? So we're just gonna let that slowly cook. So we've got a local bakery here that's done a sourdough and a little wheat bread for us. So we're gonna flip that over. See, it's starting to get nice and golden brown there.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So see, now you see this cheese is starting to kind of ooze out. And that's the best part, is when it starts to ooze like that. Nice and gooey cheese. Now we can play with our presentation, however we think that it's gonna look best. So we'll just put that right in the center there. And we're gonna put a nice little dollop of this cherry. Put a little bit of that juice right around. And then lastly, put a little bit of our jalapeno honey.
This is really good. The Museum here in Seattle was the brainchild of Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen.
When it first opened in 2000, it was known as the Experience Music Project and Science Fiction Museum and Hall of Fame. The museum is constructed from 21,000 aluminum and stainless steel shingles and 280 steel ribs. If its 400 tons of structural steel were stretched to the lightest banjo string, it would extend 1/4 of the way to Venus. Seattle is also known for its cutting-edge science, and several of the EMP Museum's exhibits celebrate science fiction and how it can motivate the next generation of explorers. Seattle has deep musical roots, and the Nirvana exhibit at the EMP Museum celebrates Seattle's historical musical contributions.
Tell us about Seattle's musical roots in the Nirvana exhibit.
Here in Seattle, there was this genre of music created in the 90s called grunge. And one of the big grunge bands was called Nirvana. And we have an exhibit about Nirvana that explores the roots of that band and tells the whole story of their musical careers. We have a lot of instruments that the band used, including a few guitars that Kurt Cobain smashed, so they're all in pieces. The one thing I really love is we have a lot of snapshots that the band took while they were on the road. It's very human. It really shows them as human beings and not like big rock stars.
What's for dessert?
We're doing a brioche bread pudding with blueberries and white chocolate. So this is a brioche. Go ahead and pull that bread and just start pulling it into chunks. With any bread pudding, really the main ingredients other than the bread is milk and cream and eggs. Go right in there.
How many eggs?
There's gonna be 8 eggs in this. So we've got heavy cream here, and we've got milk. Vanilla extract, do about half of that. And we've got sugar. This is just a white chocolate chip. You can certainly use dark chocolate chips too. So we've got blueberries. Let's go ahead and put all of those in. So this is the whole nutmeg. We're just gonna grate this right on a microplane.
We grate the cinnamon stick too?
It's a little bit harder to do, so if you need a lot of it, it's better to just get the ground stuff. But
Cinnamon actually comes from the bark of the cinnamon tree. The bark is ground to a fine powder like this one.
and we'll put a little bit of lemon zest in. All right, so just roll your sleeves up and get in there and mix it up by hand. You want to make sure it's all nice and evenly mixed. And we're gonna use a little non-stick spray, just so we can pop those bread puddings out of there. So we'll do a little bit of the bread pudding mixture right into our cups. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna bake these in a preheated oven in a water bath. And what the water bath does is keep direct heat from overcooking them. So it's gonna cook them all nice and evenly. So we're gonna go in the oven with these. Right out of the oven, our bread pudding.
Wow, this looks so pretty.
Nice thing about these little cups is you can flip it over and it comes right out. We've got a little lavender syrup, so it's equal parts sugar and water that we've added a little bit of dried lavender flower to, so we get this nice kind of pink color. And we've got creme fraiche. And so you get this nice kind of creamy, sour cream almost type flavor. And then we'll garnish with some fresh blueberries.
That looks so pretty. Are we serving anything on the side?
Well, we've also got a signature dish from the Space Needle 1962. This is the Lunar Orbiter with our Weedle Delight ice cream.
How do you make it do that?
That is dry ice.
Dry ice is carbon dioxide gas, CO2, frozen into a solid form. It's made by compressing carbon dioxide gas until it liquefies at about 870 pounds per square inch of pressure. When the pressure is released, some of the liquid turns back into gas, while some of the liquid dries into ice, frost, or snow, which is collected and pressed into pellets or blocks. Dry ice has a surface temperature of -109.3 degrees Fahrenheit and is often used to keep things cold for long periods of time. Unlike regular ice, which is made of water, H2O, and freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. When dry ice sublimates, it reverts to the form of gas, so there's no messy liquid left behind. As dried ice comes into contact with warm air and sublimates, it releases a visible mist, which is the effect used in this recipe. But because it's so cold, it's also dangerous, so it should never come in contact with your skin. Subterranean is a word meaning beneath the surface of the earth. Subterranean remains of early civilizations can be found all over the world. As civilizations have grown and populations have shifted over time, old towns and villages have been replaced by newer, larger cities. Often, these new cities have been built right on top of the towns that were there before them. Here in Seattle, there's just such an archaeological find, and it's known as the Underground. Much of the city of Seattle was originally constructed on soggy tide flats. In 1889, the Great Seattle Fire destroyed about 25 square blocks in the heart of Seattle and an area known as Pioneer Square. After the fire, as the city was being rebuilt, a decision was made to raise the streets and sidewalks. But reconstruction had already begun, so that as the new level was built up, the first floor of many structures and the streets between them got buried underground, creating a series of catacombs. Here's a fun fact. Knowing that the buildings they were constructing would have their first floor eventually buried, architects designed many of the buildings so that the first floor was very plain and any embellishments started on the second floor.
In the 1950s, Bill Spidell, a preservationist, successfully campaigned to have the area designated as a historic district and later was responsible for launching the underground tours. The Chihuly Garden and Glass exhibition in Seattle contains stunning, colorful glass sculpture constructions that take the form of enormous plants and flowers. Glass is solid at room temperature. Its state begins to change as it's heated. At temperatures between 700 and 900 degrees Fahrenheit, glass begins to have the consistency of pudding. When it reaches a temperature of about 1,250 degrees, it is the consistency of taffy. At this temperature, glass is malleable but not totally liquid. It can be formed and shaped using a series of special techniques known as glass blowing. The process of cooling glass from these extremely high temperatures must be done slowly to reduce the risk of cracking or shattering the glass. Dale Chihuly uses the science of glass to make some amazing art. One of our favorite parts of the exhibition is the glass house. It is a 40-foot tall glass and steel structure covering 4,500 square feet. The suspended sculptures in the center look like giant flowers hanging in a light-filled greenhouse. We also love the garden, which seems like a scene out of a fairy tale. Giant trees, plants, and flowers surprised us as we walked along the path. Science can definitely be beautiful. Hadley and I have really enjoyed exploring the Pacific Northwest. We want to say thank you to Executive Chef Jeff Maxfield and everyone at the Space Needle for taking us through several Seattle-inspired dishes. And we are so appreciative to Johnny Yokoyama and the fishmongers at Pike Place Fish for explaining the importance of fresh fish to Seattle's culinary traditions and for their fish catching tips. And huge thanks to Mike Osborne and Sosio's Fruit and Produce for showing us some of Washington State's signature fruits. And we appreciated having the opportunity to explore the Museum of Pop Culture and Mount Rainier. Back in the early 1960s, when the Space Needle was unveiled at the World's Fair, explorers were just starting to dream of flights into space.
Since then, space exploration has been pushed forward by explorers and scientists who dare to experiment and through trial and error make those dreams a reality.
So don't be afraid to try out new ideas. Because whether it's in the kitchen or at your school's science fair, inventing something isn't just good, it's twice as good!
For more information about the dishes prepared on today's show, including a listing of ingredients and the recipes, please visit us at twiceasgoodshow.com.
Twice as Good with Hadley and Delaney is brought to you by Mila. Immer besser, forever better. Mila. And by Cuties. Cute you can eat. Cuties. By KitchenWorks. Wherever we go, that's where the party's at. KitchenWorks.